I'm the Gangsta Nerd, and I love professional wrestling. I've been watching it for most of my life. As much as I love a good match, what keeps me coming back time and time again are the promos. Cutting a promo is what will make you or break you in professional wrestling. Unless you're Brock Lesnar. But no matter how good a match you put on, how tight your ring work, how athletic and strong, if you can't get on the mic and keep people's attention, you're not going to be around long. But at the same time, if you can grab the mic and work magic, everything gets better, making matches more memorable, making us laugh, making us mad. Without the promo, professional wrestling may have shriveled up and died decades ago. So with that in mind, I am Walt, the most gangster nerd on YouTube, and this is the 10 greatest talkers of all time.
Jake Roberts. Jake Roberts is perhaps one of the most unique wrestlers of all time. The DDT, the Python, the mullet, everything just worked. But what took Jake Roberts to the next level was his ability to get on the mic and captivate the audience. During the late 80s and early 90s, at a time when almost everyone seemed to cut the same promo, staring at the camera and yelling about how they were going to beat their opponent, Jake, on the other hand, would speak normally but intelligently, articulating his intentions, being incredibly well-spoken and at the same time, fiercely intense. Jake was almost hypnotic, drawing you in and making you believe every word he said was true. One of the best examples came during his feud with Macho Man Randy Savage when, during a pre-match interview, Jake decided not to talk about Randy, but instead Miss Elizabeth, remarking how he enjoyed seeing her eyes fill with fear, adding yet another layer of personal animosity to a feud that was already white hot. Randy Savage. Randy Savage is perhaps the most imitated wrestler of all time, and that is thanks in large part to his ability to get on the microphone and make magic happen. Seriously, his promos are iconic. With a unique voice and a distinct delivery coupled with a touch of the macho madness, the man that was too hot to handle and too cold to hold could whip the crowd into a frenzy almost effortlessly. Cutting promos that were sometimes crazy, sometimes strange, and always exciting in entertainment, he was such a good talker that he was able to cross over to the mainstream with his now legendary line for Slim Jim, "Need a little excitement? Snap into a Slim Jim," and his iconic "Oh yeah" has got to be one of, if not the greatest lines in wrestling history. Dig it? CM Punk. The Pipe Bomb. Paul Heyman. There has never been a character in the history of wrestling quite like Paul Heyman. You may love him, you may hate him, but when he speaks, you shut up and listen, and that's a fact. Paul Heyman as a manager was insufferable, but when he took the reins at ECW, his best stuff came out. Doing something that hadn't been beaten to the ground yet, he basically reinvented the work shoot, and got it over with his own words. And as his career progressed, he would only become better. During the Invasion angle, his iconic almost shoot promo on Vince McMahon and how he killed the territory system was light years ahead of its time. Not to mention at ECW's One Night Stand, where he managed to verbally assassinate the WWE talent in attendance. Seriously, JBL's image has never gotten over what Heyman said. But even to this day, as Brock Lesnar's manager or advocate, he is still a force of nature on a microphone. Jim Cornette. One of the greatest managers of all time, Jim Cornette could and can talk like no other. Getting on the mic and talking a blue streak whenever he showed up and being the mouthpiece for several of the greatest tag teams of all time, Jim Cornette could get in front of a crowd and infuriate everyone. Seriously, there were several times he got under people's skin to the point he sparked a riot. But that's how you knew he was good. Portraying an entitled coward with a lot of mouth but would run away when physically confronted, he had you so angry you were fine getting arrested just so you could punch him one time. Speaking with a high-pitched voice and an air of entitlement that seemed to demean anyone he was talking about, his entire career is a highlight reel of great promo moments. The man is so talented that even in his retirement from wrestling, his podcast, The Jim Cornette Experience, his fans tune in weekly just to hear him talk. And that is awesome. Chris Jericho. It's not hard to see why Y2J ranks so highly on this list. The man had been nothing but gold on the mic, going as far back as the former WCW. His Man of 1004 Holds promo is still hilarious all these years later. But unfortunately, WCW was unable to do anything of substance with Jericho, so he would move on to the WWE, where he would finally be allowed to show off how good he really was. To add to that, when he first debuted, he would match mic skills with The Rock. Some would even say getting the better of him on some occasions. Also, his legendary feud with Stephanie McMahon during the Invasion angle was one of the few highlights of that period in time. Even as a heel, you had to watch him whenever he showed up. The man could generate heat like no other. Just look at some of the horrible things he said about CM Punk's family. But, whether you love him or love to hate him, you can't deny the fact he's so good, he can literally get a clipboard over with the fans. All on his talking ability. Dusty Rhodes. The Lil Plumber's son, he came out the ditch at 9 years old and grew up to be so sweet. Can you dig it? I know I did. Dusty Rhodes' common man character really made the man larger than life, cutting groundbreaking, hard-hitting promos that grabbed the hearts of every person in the crowd and making them believe in the American dream. No matter the situation, Dusty Rhodes throughout his career was dynamite on a mic. But it was during his iconic feud with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen that we've seen his best work. The now legendary Hard Times promo is a must-see for any aspiring wrestling nerd, showing off his ability to use real-life examples of the hard times everyday people went through and relating to them in his own recent tribulations. He seemingly added a level of reality and at the same time raised the stakes. By the end, everybody in the crowd watching were ready to follow Dusty into battle themselves, and it's that ability that makes the American Dream one of the greatest promos of all time. Ric Flair. The Nature Boy, the jet flying, limousine riding, kiss stealing, willin' Dillon, son of a gun. Ric Flair was the NWA during the 80s. Where Hulk Hogan was the superhero you loved because you wanted to be like him, Ric Flair was the villain you hated because you wished you were him. Getting on the microphone and just rubbing people's faces in the fact that he was successful, rich, a star, and usually the champion. Always pointing out that he was custom fit from head to toe and letting you know it was Rolex time, Ric Flair's arrogant and self-infatuated style would demean his opponents and infuriate the fans. To his credit, Ric Flair would change with the times, becoming louder, more intense, and perhaps a bit unhinged. Where during the 80s, Flair would arrogantly point and laugh at the family man Ricky Steamboat, in the 90s he would go half insane, yelling, strutting around, and dropping elbows on the ring itself. Ric Flair could keep you glued to the action, not to mention the fact that his "woo" is so iconic, you say it anywhere and everyone knows who you're talking about. Roddy Piper. There can be no doubt about this entry. Roddy Piper is one of, if not the greatest talker ever. No other wrestler in history of professional wrestling has ever been able to generate his levels of heat by themselves. You absolutely loved to hate him. You wanted to see him get beat. At the same time, he was entertaining on a level that is impossible to replicate. Saying things that caused you to cringe, wince, and laugh all at the same time, he was intense, vicious, malicious, and totally unpredictable. A one-man formula for success, and his own legendary Piper's Pit was the feather in his cap, with some of his best moments coming from this segment, including his iconic line, "Just when they think they have the answers, I change the questions," as well as, "You do not throw rocks at a man holding a machine gun." Everything he said was awesome. Something else to note, as Roddy got older, he only seemed to get better. No matter where he went, when he had a mic in his hand, you knew it was going to be great. Seriously, it is borderline impossible to find an example of a bad promo from Roddy Piper. Truly an icon. The Rock. Perhaps the best talker in wrestling history. If you see The Rock with a microphone in his hand, you're going to want to know what he's saying. No one has been so charismatic, so gifted at the art of cutting the promo, that they can almost ruin someone just by mentioning them during a promo. Case in point, Billy Gunn. Taking an accomplishment like winning the King of the Ring and reducing it to less than nothing, it's brutally brilliant. Though most people love to remember The Rock as the good guy, it is undeniable that his best work always came when he was a heel. During the lead up to his second match with Hogan, he would create some of his best material. His comedic feud with the Hurricane would help catapult the Hurricane to new heights, and not to mention all of the wars of words he had with Steve Austin. The Rock was so good, in fact, he was able to introduce wrestling terminology to the mainstream. At one point, everybody was saying, "If you smell what The Rock is cooking," raising an eyebrow and calling everybody they did not like either a candy ass or a jabroni. Yes, you know you did it too. It's also worth pointing out that Rock was so talented that one of his sayings, "SmackDown," literally went on to become an actual word. Name another wrestler who's done that.
So there it is. I know I'm right, and I think you do too. But if you really want to argue with me about it, tell me in the comments. I'm Walt, the most gangster nerd on YouTube, and I'll be seeing you soon enough.